Welcome back to 20th Century Battles. Today will be part one of a two-part series I'm going to be doing on the 1995 Srebrenica Massacre. In part two, I'll be covering the massacre itself and the operation that led to the fall of Srebrenica, along with the aftermath of the massacre, while in this video, I'll be covering the collapse of Yugoslavia, along with the interconnected conflicts that led to the increased ethnic tensions that led to the genocide in Bosnia. So first and foremost, we need to look at the nation formerly known as Yugoslavia. The country was formed after World War I and was a multi-ethnic state. The ethnic groups that will be most important for the context of this video series are the Croats, Serbs, Slovenes, and Bosnian Muslims that are known as Bosniaks and will be referred to as such. So moving back to Yugoslavia, the country itself was divided into several constituent republics that operated very similarly to the constituent republics of the Soviet Union. So within Yugoslavia, there were 6 republics total. You had Croatia, Macedonia, Bosnia, Montenegro, Serbia, and Slovenia. All these republics were largely divided along ethnic lines. You could think of it similar to the Soviet Union, where they had Ukraine, Georgia, the Baltic states, Kazakhstan, and so on. Bosnia was an exception to this ethnic lines division. There was no Bosnian ethnic group. Instead, Bosnia consisted of 33% Bosnian Serbs, 44% Bosniak, and 17% Croat, and some other groups mixed in. This ethnic divide within Bosnia is going to be the most important thing to remember as this video series continues, as I try to paint the picture of how and why the events at Srebrenica took place. There's also a few distinctions here that we need to make as we continue. Serbs and Croats are the people. Serbia, Croatia, and Bosnia are the countries themselves. So you can have Bosnian Serbs or Bosnian Croats, or you could also have Croatian Serbs. These are the people who live within those nations but are from that specific ethnic group. So I hope that will help clarify things as I move on in this series. So Yugoslavia was able to avoid any ethnic conflict between these various groups for decades after World War II. This was largely due to the leadership of Joseph Tito, who was the immensely popular partisan resistance leader during the war. After the war, he established a communist government in Yugoslavia and was able to build a relatively stable economy, which helped to keep those different groups placated under his rule. In 1980, Tito died without any clear successor. As a result, the 6 republics decided to rule the country by committee, whereas the leader of each republic would meet together and make collective decisions on all the important national things that need to be decided upon. So this ended up leading to tensions between the different republics, as Serbia really wanted to keep more central power in the country, whereas Croatia and Slovenia and Bosnia wished for more autonomy. In addition, during this decade, the economy took a huge downturn as well. By the early 90s, the divide within Yugoslavia had begun to reach the breaking point. Communism had collapsed in Eastern Europe, and the economy within Yugoslavia had taken a turn for the worse. This ultimately led to Slovenia and Croatia declaring their independence on June 25, 1991. Now, the Yugoslav army attempted to maintain control of those nations, but found themselves hampered by the large-scale desertion among the non-Serb members of the army. This led to Serbia being able to control the Yugoslav army as the nation slowly collapsed. The advantage this gave them was ultimately led to them having all the heavy artillery and tanks and other heavy equipment that wasn't going to be able to benefit the other nations. Slovenia was able to secure their independence with approximately a week and a half's worth of fighting. Croatia, on the other hand, would end up spending the next 4.5 years fighting for their independence. This fight would really entail the Croatians attempting to control the Serb majority regions of their nation. Bosnia followed the independence route as well. They formally declared their independence in April of 1992. Now, the Bosnian Serb population did not want Bosnia to become independent. They had preferred to remain in Yugoslavia, where Serbs in general were the majority, and they felt threatened at the prospect of being an ethnic minority in Bosnia, since Bosniaks far outnumbered them. As a result, the Bosnian Serbs formed the Republika Srpska. The intent of this was taking over Bosnia and putting it under Bosnian Serb rule. Neighboring Serbia was more than happy to support their ethnic brethren and provide material support along with direct support of the Yugoslav army. Serbia also had ambitions of a greater Serbia, with the vision of that bringing all ethnic Serbs under one flag. This vision was largely supported among Bosnian Serbs as well. The Bosnian Serb army was led by General Ratko Mladic, and they made rapid gains, securing large swaths of territory, and they ultimately ended up controlling around 2/3 of Bosnia. Now, as part of these advances, the early stages of ethnic cleansing began. Around 70,000 Bosniaks had been forced from their homes and had to flee to non-Serb-held areas of Bosnia. In addition, almost 3,200 Bosniak civilians had been killed as well. Some were as collateral damage of the fighting, but most were outright murdered in cold blood by the Bosnian Serb army. In addition to this, they destroyed nearly 300 Bosniak villages and towns, mostly in the eastern and southern parts of Bosnia. By 1993, the UN had a significant force of peacekeepers in Bosnia and had begun to establish safe areas. In April of 1993, Srebrenica was declared one of these safe zones. Now, the town had a pre-war population of 5,000 to 6,000, but due to the influx of refugees, the town now had nearly 50,000 to 60,000 people seeking refuge under supposed UN protection. Srebrenica also had approximately 6,000 Bosnian soldiers from the Bosnian army defending it, but it was also surrounded and besieged by about 1,000 to 2,000 soldiers from the Bosnian Serb army who had cut off the majority of supply lines into the town. Now, the Serb army was armed with heavy artillery and tanks, which left the defenders really unable to break out of their confinement. The humanitarian situation was dire, with the lack of food and supplies reaching the town, even with UN supplies attempting to get in. By 1995, General Mladic made the decision to finally secure the enclave that was deep within Bosnian Serb territory. On July 6, 1995, the Bosnian Serbs launched Operation Krivaja 95 to finally take over the town. That will conclude part 1 of this 2-part series. Operation Krivaja 95 will be covered in detail in part 2. Also in part 2 is where I will go into detail also with the Srebrenica Massacre that occurred during and after the operation. So please be sure to subscribe so you don't miss part 2, which I'll be trying to put out within a few days of part 1. So thank you for watching. This is 20th Century Battles, and I hope to see you at part 2.